Welcome back and hello. My name is Peter Pilgrim and I am looking for the next possibilities, opportunities, contract for 2021. And I have a plan of action. My plan of action is to go back to outside IR35 contracting because I like it. Off payroll worker rules, tax change is pending, I know, in April 2021. I want to take advantage of the small company exemption. So if you're small and you fit the criteria in just a moment, all you would need is to provide me as the worker a status determination statement. And we'll talk about that in just a second. SDS. I want to work from home in the year 2021. Occasional commute. For me, it's got to be safe because, of course, I'm from the Black, Asian and minority ethnicity demographic, as they say, and it has to matter to me that I'm safe. And does it matter anyway? COVID-19 really proved that remote adversity is a lie. It's fake, really. We proved that it worked. Okay, small company exemption hiring for me. In order to be small, based on the company rules, the company must satisfy 2 out of 3 conditions for 2 consecutive tax years. And this exemption, by the way, with warning, will stick around probably until 24, 25. Eventually, the Tories may vote it out. So the criteria is annual turnover of less than 10.2 million. I got it wrong in the other presentation. I originally said 10.5 million. It's 10.2 million. But if you're doing that sort of business in 2 years, then wow, you're doing fantastically well for 10 million in 2 years. The employee headcount, less or equal to 50. Balance sheet total, about 5 million. Or less than. So if you can satisfy 2 out of 3, then Bob's your uncle and Sheila's your auntie. And I'd like to hear from you. Anyway, smile. Okay, you know this already. I'm a contractor, I'm a worker, I have my own personal service company, a PSC. I provide a service, company provides an invoice to a client, and in your small company exempt, because you got that turnover and the employee count less than 50 or equal, and you send me back a contract for services plus VAT. And what that means that I pay myself a dividend and a small salary, and I can claim business expense. And if you looked at my other presentation from before where I went through working and living from home, and that poor chap or lady who commuted all the way from Scotland down to London. I know of another person who commuted the other way, all the way down from Cornwall to London. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Anyway, we move ahead. What we have to do in order to protect contract for services is to strengthen substitution and mutuality of obligation. We really have to strengthen these 2 things here, because substitution is where I'm a Java engineer. So I should be able to help you at my expense, find you another Java engineer if I get sick. That has to be written into the contract, and that's why we have to strengthen it. And then there's mutuality of obligation. You're not obliged as the client to provide me with work, and I don't have to rely on you for work. This is a business to business relationship, isn't it? Not an employee. That's what it's all about. That concrete case. Anyway, let's move straight ahead. So if you want to hire me for your startup small company exempt company, I provide engineering, Java, Kotlin, Scala, Spring Boot, microservices. And this year I know a lot more about Angular. I work in the cloud. So AWS, Kubernetes, people do Cloud Foundry. I help with software design, building implementation. I'm used to Agile, boring Agile, which is stand-ups, retrospectives, that sort of thing. I don't, even though I've got the qualification of a Scrum Master, I'm not a Scrum Master or project manager, so you need someone else for that. I provide a bit of consultancy, give some ideas, because I've worked at some stellar and large companies now and know how they operate. And on rare occasions, I provide architecture. I can help with your architecture, but the way I tend to work, the architecture is already defined, especially in larger companies, and they have a proof of concept or prototype, and they want to get that to most valued release or MVP. So you already have milestones in your project. It's project based. There's deliverables, there's materials, there's scope, reduction of scope. There's an MVP, and you have a super product. You have great people. Small companies should have great people. There shouldn't be any toxicity at all. If you're a small company, you've got a toxic culture, then are you really David Brent? I'm sorry. That's insane, isn't it? David Brent was about 18 years ago in the office, so we shouldn't have these problems now. You should be instilling great culture. So, moving strictly and further along, you have a budget, you have resource, and obviously there's minimal supervision for me, and obviously that's to do with control. And you have basic infrastructure. You don't have complicated infrastructure. You don't have change management boards. You're not trying to get software released in production or got into a live state, and you have to get it approved, like countless approved and committees. You're a startup. You're less than 10.1 million turnover, annual turnover, 2 tax years in a row. So why would you have that infrastructure? You just get on with it and do it. And therefore, we have this contractual understanding. I will provide support, even out of our support, if you actually need it. And we come to some arrangement, whatever that is needed. Everybody is trying in the last decade. So we're in 2020 now. Now, I first heard about this book, the Phoenix Project, at the, the Java Posse Roundup, in the early 2010s, and I heard somebody talking about, and I know one person, a couple of people who work at Netflix, and they really recommended this project. In Britain, I've never come across, apart from gov.uk, where developers sat next to operations. I know one person who was DevOps there, or at least two people who were DevOps, looked after the cloud, even before it was like cloud, AWS cloud for public sector, before that. And I've never seen it yet. Developers don't necessarily work with operations. It's still siloed, surprise, surprise. And it's still one of these books. I went to the DevOps London, so I'm getting a little bit out of scope here, that I should stop. Anyway, if you are a small company and you want to hire me for outside IR35 small company exemption, just hit pause and take my details down. I'll give you a couple of seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's move along. What I want to talk, the heart of this talk, is WeWork. It's not, you probably know this book, you probably heard of this guy, you would have heard of this book if you were around in 2010 in the industry, and you probably know of David Heinemeier Hansson, who co-created Ruby on Rails, a Ruby language framework. It was a bit before Web 2. It led to Web 2. I think Web 2 was, 2005, 2006, when Google Maps, when we started to see great things to do with the web. Oh, I sound like an oldie now. So he's the co-leader of 37 Signals, a famous development company that created this amazing software as a service SaaS project called Basecamp. And he's also behind Hey.co, which is the reworked and reimagined email for those who like that service. In any case, this book helped to define where the future was. I mean, I worked in a large corporate environment, so there was no way in hell they were ever going to apply these ideas. I may be just drinking the best cider there is. Anyway, the book is about reducing waste, prioritizing visually. It's about lean. It's about agile, breaking that old business as usual mantra of working practices. and how to flush out ideas. You don't need all those meetings. Here's a clue anyway. And one of the things it promoted, that Basecamp was, they were one of the companies that came from this open source environment in America, where there's distance and long distances anyway. So remote was key to them. And surprise, surprise, in 2020, what did we get? The SARS corona COVID-19 virus. And there we were, the remote couldn't be done. Well, that was a lie, wasn't it? That was an untruth, because we're better than that. So suddenly everybody was remote communicating, stand-ups in the morning, ceremonies, retrospectives. We were using Teams, Zoom, whatever Google was creating or trying to recreate with Google Hangouts went nowhere. And even for me, I was surprised by the ability to remote peer, to take control of somebody's screen and help them get on board. There was even remote provisioning and deployment going on. Remember, you in an office, you had to get someone, no offense, 4 eyes in you if you wanted to up and take down a database. Now the world has gone nuts in a really good way, because we finally put the rubbish that we couldn't remote work or work from home in the bin, and companies had to get real. And now we always had remote repositories. When we were contractors and developing and designing and architecting software, we were pushing and Git pulling and Git pushing to a GitLab or GitHub repository somewhere out in cyberspace. It just happened that cyberspace was probably on premise somewhere. But now again, if you're a small startup, why would you have an on-premise GitHub? Wouldn't you use a cloud solution such as GitHub, and then get your credit card out and actually pay for that site, or pay your company account? That doesn't make any sense for a small company. And if you're doing that, you deserve to be put against the wall. Remote deployment. Now, this is interesting. Now, a lot of companies still are using on-premise, but you're a small company, right? You should be using AWS, Google, Azure, Microsoft, Elastic, JElastic, Heroku, something other than being on a server inside a building. That does not make any sense at all. I can't see a use case. Even security people will put their software into the cloud because it's going to be useful for even penetration testers to take down the software, to pull down the actual chain remotely in order to test or to hack into somebody's network. It doesn't make any sense to keep deployments on premise, and that is gone for the birds. And for the rest of this decade, that's my prediction for the 2020s. On premise will kind of disappear. Anyway, moving straight ahead, this is small company exemption, and what I love, especially for you who are small companies, you get the benefit. Suppose we keep on having lockdowns. Now you can just order a laptop. You can order an Apple MacBook Pro, this M1, and have that sent to you, get that provisioned. And even the contractor, like myself, can use their own laptop. All we need is access codes and keys so that we can get into your GitLab and GitHub and obviously SSH keys, secure SSH keys to get into your AWS. And the job is done. We can supply idea, software development. We probably need to buy software to help us build the software, like idea or any software that we need that helps professionally, like Photoshop, Adobe Creative License, which costs about 50 quid a month. But it doesn't make any sense now to just own laptops anymore, because that, I think, is even going away. Yes, you probably have intellectual property rights going on, and you need to secure that if someone tries to steal data, there's data. I tell a lie, there's going to be data issues there, but even then, the barrier to entry is much, much lower. And as I said, you can ship a laptop to anyone in the world, and at least in the Western world, by DPD or DHL, and get that provision, and get people onboarded by training and orientation. So my blast is over, and let me summarize again. I'm going back to outside IR 35 contracting, outside of scope. I would dearly love to work for a small company who obviously fits 2 out of the 3 criteria. We're all the way back there on the other slides. And it will be remote working for me for the majority of 2021. I probably, depending on lockdowns and if it's safe, probably it's worth commuting and meeting up with people in the workplace. Other than that, I bid you adieu, and that's it. I'll see you in 2021.